Now that our initial texture bakes are complete from ZBrush, I'm going to run them through my new texturing tool, Substance Designer 4.4. I've loaded up my first substance here, and basically what a substance is, it's a collection of resources. In this case, I'll focus on the helmet, and the resources consist of our texture maps and also our low polygon game geometry. It also consists of a graph, and a graph contains our output channels, diffuse, normal, and specular, and it also is going to contain how we choose to make our resources relate to each other. So I've imported a few of our textures from ZBrush out here into our graph. I'm going to start with our tone map or color map, the difference between metal 1, metal 2, and rubber. We have our cavity map, our height map, an ambient occlusion map, tangent space normal map, and world space normal map. And these will be a great start, but they're not going to be enough to complete this process. So the first thing I'm going to do is use these textures to create a couple support textures for us. Basically, I create this micrograph right here, and I've set this up to create my scratch and dirt masks. So let's go through the scratch mask and how we created that. I'm starting with the height map, contrasting it a bit, and what I want to do is blend that with the cavity map. And I'm going to do that in our metal edgeware filter. And our filters can be found down here in this panel. What the metal edgeware filter is going to do is give us this nice fine edge with a severe amount of damage. All of this is controlled by sliders. I can take it down significantly. In this case, we're fine with heavy. This becomes our scratch and damage mask. For our dirt mask, we start with the cavity map and pipe it directly into the dirt filter. And what that does is it inverts it. It adds this micro scratch grain to it. And it also adds this small sort of muddled quality to the texture, so it's no longer constant color. With those two helper maps complete, we're basically ready to go. So let's step through how we went ahead and constructed our graph. Here's our master material. It's composed of 4 submaterials: rubber, metal 1, metal 2, and undersuit. For now, I'm just going to concentrate on how we constructed metal 2. Metal 2 begins with a dark blue component from our texture map. I remove the color values and saturate it to pure black, pure white. I'm going to use this as an alpha mask on this. Just a constant color chosen at random. I mix those two together here, which gives us our masked color. The next step I'm going to want to do is add some grain to this. So I start with some high frequency white noise. I multiply that several times so it's much finer and remove some of the contrast and blend that to our color. Now what that's going to do is add this fine-grained powder coat sort of feel to this piece. I want it to seem industrial, military, heavy grade, not hot rod, glassy sort of finish. The next step will involve our dirt map that we created and a grunge map from my library. We're going to combine those two together here. Then we're going to invert that image, and that's going to give us our grime mask. We're going to combine that with our color, and that's going to give us this, and that's holding up really well. You can already see the geometry beginning to poke through, how these higher, outer, sharper edges are sort of cleaner from being brushed upon tops of rivets, whereas in the seams and the holes, the cavitation, we have this nice degree of grime accumulation, which is cool, as well as just some really nice randomness and human overuse to the actual piece itself. We're still preserving our little fine powder coat underneath. Yep, that's going very well. The next step I'm going to do here is add a tiny bit of directional lighting information. I'm going to do that with the height map. So I'm going to contrast it just a little bit and blend that in at about 0.47. It just richens the piece a little bit and begins to accentuate upward or higher facing surfaces versus lower or concave sort of surfaces. This completes our paint component. Now what we need is something for this paint to actually be on. So here in the graph I've added a little section to create some bare metal. From my library I grabbed this tileable metal texture. It's got lots of micro noise, high frequency noise, scratches. I multiply that several times so it's even finer, and then blend that into our contrasted height map from the step before. And that's going to give us what basically becomes our bare raw metal. So now we have the metal, we have the paint that's on it. The next thing we're going to do is construct a layer to control how these interact. So up here in the graph, I'm going to grab our curvature map, or cavity map. I'm going to level it, desaturate it completely to use as an alpha mask. And I'm going to run that through this edge damage filter. And what that's going to do is preserve the thickest, lightest pixels from the previous texture and destroy them, like this. And this is all controlled by this slider here for thinner, sort of contemporary military weapons. You'd probably do something right about 0.81, a little fine, sort of seen a little bit of wear but not a ton. In this case we're going heavy duty industrial wear, as we're going to use this as a mask. And that mask is basically going to control the scratches through the paint layer that reveal the metal layer. So let's combine those three together right here in the next step. Okay, so we have our powder coated paint, well used, well grunged, fairly beat up, edges damaged, scratched, revealing a raw, unpainted base metal. This basically is going to complete our diffuse map. I'm going to clean up the alpha channel a little bit and prepare to just sort of send it out on its way to our texture output. But before I do that, what I've done on this part of the graph is I've added an extra little tangent. What this is going to do basically is take our base metal and our edge mask and combine just those two and create our specular map for this particular part. And what the specular map's going to do is control how lighting reacts to the pixels on the model, whereas the darker the pixel is on this map, the weaker the lighting reaction is, and the brighter it is on this map, the stronger the lighting reaction is. At pure black there's zero lighting reaction. As you can see, even the paint, it is much duller, but it's not without its slight reflectivity and light bounce, which is going to be important to sell the fact that this is some sort of metallic piece. So the next step is to shoot them out to our texture combiners. Over here in our texture combining category, we simply daisy chain the submaterials together. So here we have our metal 2. I combine that with our metal 1, and then combine that with our rubber. And then we basically kick that out over here because we're finished with it. We do the same thing with the specular. We take our metal 2, combine that with the metal 1, and that with the rubber, and kick that out here as well. Our normal map, still the normal map, haven't messed with it here. So for a final bit of housekeeping, let's just define this final texture output area. And now that our diffuse, our specular, and our normal map are complete, the next step of the process is to kick those back to Photoshop for some final composition and previewing the model in 3D Studio Max.